Hi all, I have a quick message for you, and that will be the last podcast episode or last video of my 5th season of Investigative Selfism. And it's on something that encompasses so much, actually. I was thinking on what to focus my 5th season, yes, and I've decided to focus it on things we really just need to absolutely smash, not to tolerate, not to deconstruct and think about them, but just smash, right? It's just like, fuck this shit, like, no space for this, should be no space for that. And I talked about several things. It's been a very slow season because of what's happening in Palestine and my other more political project that I've been focusing on much more. But the topic to close my season, and the topic that is that overarching theme, where we have to smash not just our self-image, our privilege, the idea of, our privileges, various, like, several things I've talked about in my previous episodes, but that theme today is self-abandonment. Yes. It is such a broad concept, obviously, but it fits, I think, so nicely. Not only to close the season, but to talk about when we see what's happening in the world, when we see the rise of fascism, right? And you might think that, well, then self-abandonment, if I don't know what it is, it sounds maybe being less selfish and more caring for others and focusing more on sense of community, collective action. Actually, that's not it. Like, these are all wonderful things that we need. But self-abandonment is, how is it defined? Is that feeling when you are choosing to center someone else, the needs, the desires, the worldview of someone else instead of yourself, of your own, but not in a way that, maybe it's like a small compromise, because there are many compromises in the world that maybe you shouldn't rebel against, but there are things that cut more deeply. And that feeling of, I describe it as, I'm not living my own life. I know that description comes with, like, that comes from a privilege. Like, I'm not living my own life. My life should be different. Like, how many people have zero choices? Like, how many people didn't have the a system of conditions that allowed you to be in this position, to allow that allowed you to even ask these questions. I do know that, of course. And at the same time, that self-abandonment can happen in many ways, and it can affect others. So it's that deep feeling of this is not me, and this is not me in some significant ways that we feel, right? The body knows, the body feels. We might intellectualize it, we might, find excuses to tell ourselves that, no, this is what I want. No, this is my life. This is exactly how. You might know the feeling, you might remember maybe some situations you've been in that not cause you to feel it, but that create the conditions in which that feeling appeared, let's say. And I want to say a couple of things and to push all of us to fight it in the ways that we can. And not only in our relationships, or when we maybe more often hear about it is when someone talks about romantic relationships, because a lot of self-abandonment can happen there. Oh, I will, yes, I will do this because the other person wants me to do it. And look, I'm so kind because I'm not doing it for myself. I'm doing that for the other person. And once again, not to be confused with just kindness, right? Though I guess kindness doesn't come with grudges and a deep sense of dissatisfaction and other things in itself. So we hear about that self-abandonment when people talk about personal relationships, how one might lose his or herself in a relationship when people in a very unhealthy way merge into one, and other expressions you might have heard. So that's one big area of life, right, where that self-abandonment might happen. Have I been there myself? Yes. And would the body tell me that I'm in that situation? Also yes. Just how long it would take me to listen and to change my situation, right? When I was just like, this is not, like, wow, I am not just compromising a lot. I don't want this. I actually don't want this. And I'm allowed not to want something. I am allowed to want other things. Very, very simple, right? But also I'm encouraging you not to, and this is that more political dimension, not to self-abandon yourselves when it comes to what's happening in the world. And yes, just that realm, what's happening in the world. And I do think, not too often, thankfully, because the mind is occupied with other things. Ooh, but I do think sometimes of, various coaches, and not just like internet personalities, but I guess like thought leaders is a word. And sometimes even, medical professionals, people who they are experts in areas that are actually defined, right? But I do think more like internet personalities and like life coaches and some people who've created a lot of value in my life. Like some years ago, I changed my career. I got back to what was meaningful and important to me, even though, not necessarily like an easy ride, not an easy decision. And that time that then when that help was very needed, I actually did get it from those thought leaders. So I'm still grateful. And as I talk about in one of my episodes, that you really have to allow the image of your idols to fall, to change when new information is coming in. When I think of that self-abandonment, when I'm saying this, I do wonder, and I don't know which one is worse. If, let's say, you are a thought leader, you have a very big following, you have a platform, like you really have a platform, and you seem kind, and I don't think necessarily that you're like a horrible, secretly a horrible person. But for example, if you choose, and it is a choice, if you choose not to use your platform that has, it's so fucking broad, it's a big platform, you have it, and you choose not to use it in ways that would bring a little bit more justice, to this world, not to educate and inform your audience, I'm just like, the platforms that I have, they're so small. I mean, I love anyone who's interested in what I have to say, really, and if you find value in what I'm sharing, what I'm amplifying, I'm so grateful. Like, you have no idea. Like, I don't want to minimize that. I have very small platforms. Like, they're very small platforms. I have some pages. But there are people who can, like, if they organize a fundraiser, I'm like, the millions you could gather for certain causes, like millions, easily, without doing much. Like, you could get that money, I'm like, I'll give you those like 10 organizations, wow, 10, I'll say there are many, but like, just like right now, the work in Gaza, like I can just, So if you choose not to use your platform, there are two things. Either one, you don't care, you don't know what's happening, you're just so focused, and you're so much in your world, and you're very unaware, and you're ignorant, even though you have all the resources in the world to actually educate yourself about it. Like, that's really bad. I think it is really bad. I am allowed to judge and have, to make a normative statement. And then if you don't know, then if you do know, and maybe you're horrified, but you're not going to say anything. Why? Because you don't want to anger, because you don't want to deter, who? Fascists. Because you're like, man, maybe someone in my audience who are like, yes, children should be killed sometimes, and they brought it onto themselves, and sometimes that has to be done, and ethnic cleansing is fine, and we're just defending ourselves. Like, this is the audience who you're afraid to anger and not to call your audience anymore. Like, that's if you actually know what's happening, like, oh my God, this is fucking horrible, but you choose not to say anything because people who support that might not like it. So for me, that's I would call it very, very unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate. Self-abandonment. And then obviously, maybe you do support it, then you're just a fascist yourself. And then there's no self-abandonment, then you're actually fine. So look at that. So as just the scale, the intensity, the level of horrors, nothing's diminishing, right? In Palestine, obviously, yes, Sudan, yes, Congo, yes, ICE raids in LA, rise of fascism in more countries. Maybe you happen to live in one of them, and you're like, you should see what's happening here. I'm like, I have no doubts. I have no doubts. So for me, that has been, yes, since this is my podcast, I talk about myself. No, but it's been a very important theme in my life. And, personal things, like personal life, what's happening there. Also, I'm like, don't self-abandon. What's happening? Course correct. But also as a human being who lives in this world, who is on this planet, that question of how do I want to show up? Not like how I want to be remembered, but like, how do I want to show up? Like, what am I about? Do I live with integrity? Is a simple question also. And the answer is not in every area of my life, yes. But am I self-abandoning in ways that are very, very harmful, not just to myself, but to the world? I am not helping anyone. I am not helping anyone if I am polite and silent and I don't want to anger the fascists. That's not good for me. That's not good for fucking anyone. That self-abandonment, like, if not for yourself, which is ironic now to say, don't self-abandon yourself for others. Hey, what? That is just not serving anything. And we really, really, really need to smash that. We need to check in more often and see where that self-abandonment is happening. Are we speaking out on matters that are important? Do we have a moral spine? And do we prioritize the comfort of those who justify and praise oppression? Or do we prioritize, once again, what our own moral compass is showing? Hopefully, it is showing something, and it's pointing to more justice rather than less. Hopefully. So this is a very simple message. And I saw, a quote recently that said, being abandoned, it hurts, it's painful, but it will never be as painful as abandoning yourself. I was like, save that one and maybe quote it in my episode, because it's excellent. And many of us, we have been there. And we know that it is very painful, actually. So that's my reminder. I am closing this. It wasn't a lazy season, as I've said. I am still focusing mostly on Palestine, my political commentary work. So thank you for following that work there as well on the Exploding Head podcast and website. And just take care of yourselves. Check in. Don't see yourself as being small. Don't do that self-abandonment. Speak out. And not just act with integrity, but take pride. I think it's easy not to take pride and sometimes just having some basic courage to do the things that are good for yourself and also for others. That's it. Thank you all, and I'll see you later.